Hey everyone, this is Cali Girl 101 here, and I just wanted to tell you guys about my journey with living with endometriosis. If you don't know what endometriosis is, I'll put a picture up in my video so I can show you guys what it is. So, I wrote down a story and I wanted to tell it to you guys because I wanted my story to be out there because a lot of people don't know what endometriosis is. So, basically, I'm pretty sure I've had this most of my life, or not most of my life, but since I was 12, because that's when I started getting my period, and that's when my periods started getting really bad. I would have extremely bad cramps. Like, there were times I'd have to stay home from school, and recently I've had to stay home from work a lot because the cramps are just so intense and I can't deal with it. I can't stand. I usually go home and I just curl up in a ball for the rest of the day because it hurts so bad. So before any of that, I went to see my gynecologist when I was in my early 20s. That's the first time I've actually seen a gynecologist. And well, she told me, maybe my estrogen levels were too low, so she put me on birth control. And for the longest time, I thought that was helping because it was the pill, and this is before I even found out I had endometriosis. Well, a few months later, I went back because my boyfriend, Isaac Walter is my husband now, but my boyfriend at the time, we were having issues with intercourse. Like, it hurt so bad. So I went back to her and she just kind of looked at me crazy and she put me on like a muscle relaxer because she thought that would help. And I'm like, no, that's not what that's for. Well, I didn't really say anything. I just took the muscle relaxer and that didn't do anything. So I would say maybe months to a year later, because I was seeing her regularly and I was having pap smears from her regularly, and she kind of looked at me crazy about the pain. Well, on May 18th of 2018, I woke up in the middle of the night in so much pain. I got sick all in the bed. I was cramping so bad. I was gushing blood all over the place. And Isaac stayed home for me, my husband. He stayed home for me the next day and he took care of me. And I had such intense shoulder, back, and side pain. It was intense. Well, Isaac took me to Welke Urgent Care Sunday, I believe, and we explained to him what was going on. We told him I had so much side pain and that my shoulders were intense and my back was hurting so bad. And he saw and felt, my back, and he goes, wow, your back is like hard as rock. And I said, yeah, I know. And he put me on muscle relaxers again, and that didn't really do anything. Monday, I went to work. I was fine. I worked like a 14-hour day that day. Then Tuesday, we woke up and my side was still hurting really bad, but I didn't want to miss another day of work, so I went to work anyway. And it just, the side pain just got worse and worse, and it was horrible. So I was like, you know what, I can't deal with this anymore. So I had Isaac take me to UT Hospital. I told him what was going on. They got me a room right away because I told them that it was my side, like right here, and they thought it was like my appendix or my gallbladder or something like that. So they were able to get me a room right away. Well, I had a nurse come in there. She wanted to do a pelvic exam to see what was going on. About 20 minutes, I would say about 15 to 20 minutes later, a gynecologist came in there and he said, we're thinking your tubes might be tied around your ovaries or something like that. So we wanted to do a pelvic exam also, and I was like, well, I just had one, but they said they needed to get one too for, for them, for records. And I was like, okay. So I had 2 pelvic exams. The gynecologist came back and told me that they're gonna do like 2 small incisions right here and right here, which is, like my lower abdomen. And they said the surgery would only take about 30 minutes. I was like, all right. I was afraid. I didn't want to do this. Isaac told me, he said, you need to get the surgery done because we need to figure out what's going on. And I told him, okay, let's just get this over with. I was freaking out. So a 30-minute surgery actually turned out to be a 4-hour surgery. My dad, my stepmom, Isaac, my grandmother, my aunt, my peepaw, they were all in the waiting room freaking out because the surgery was only supposed to take 30 minutes and they didn't really tell them what was going on until I think it was like, I don't remember exactly, but they came out there and told them that it was worse than they thought. Basically, I had 2 holes on the inside, or like on my uterus, that were gushing blood, and I was internally bleeding all over the place. And my uterus was smaller than it should be, and I had, for not having a period because of taking birth control for so long, it just backed up and it had nowhere to go, so it just pretty much ruptured everywhere, and that's why it was gushing blood like a few days prior to this. So everyone told them that I wanted to have a hysterectomy, that I'd be fine with it. Like I've had bad periods all my life, and I wanted to just get a hysterectomy. And the doctors told everyone in my family pretty much that she was too young, she's still might be able to have kids down the road. And everyone kept telling them, no, she does not she wants to just have a hysterectomy. She would be okay with it, and they just wouldn't listen to them. So pretty much after that, they put me on Lupron, which it's a drug for women that have endometriosis, and it's also a chemo drug for men, I believe. And basically, I took that for 6 months. I had to get a shot on in one of my hips, like it had to be in this hip, and then it had to be in the next hip. They had to rotate it back and forth between my hips. And that was really intense medication. I do not want to take that ever again. It's pretty much what it does is it shuts down your reproductive system, and it pretty much makes you go into premenopause for 6 months. That was horrible. So after that, they put me back on a birth control pill, and that didn't really help. I was still cramping, and it didn't work. So then they had me take Orilissa for a little while. Pretty much Orilissa is like the pill version of Lupron, but it's a little less intense than Lupron. But that pill didn't work either. I was still in pain. I was bleeding a little bit, and it was just, I asked them to put me on something else. So, oh, and I forgot to add, also, this gynecologist that I saw at the hospital was the one that I'm seeing with the Lupron and the Orilissa and all that, because I never went back to the female gynecologist I saw before finding out about the endometriosis, because she was not working. It seemed like she just didn't want to hear my story, and she didn't want to help me. So when I went to UT about my side pain, I stuck with a gynecologist at UT, because the lady at Fort Sanders was the one I was seeing before, and she just she didn't help or anything. So anyway, I stuck with the gynecologist at UT and had them give me all the birth control and the medicines. And I never had a pap smear there, which I should have, because you're supposed to get a pap smear every year, and I never had one. So then after I took Doralisa, because it didn't work properly, they had me take the depot shot, which you have to get that in your arm, either your left arm or your right arm. It's just like a shot that you have to get every 3 months. That seemed like it was helping. So I didn't really have any complaints about it. I didn't have a period. I wasn't really cramping or anything. And I thought it was fine. Well, after months and almost 2 years later of taking the birth control, the Oralisa, the Lupron, the Depot, and, anything they can think of to help me try to, conquer the endometriosis. February 11th of this year, of 2020, I went to work, again feeling fine, like I didn't have anything wrong with me. I felt normal. Well, it was our 9:30 break, which is our first break of the day where I work at, and my stomach started hurting, and this is a little TMI, but I went to the bathroom because I thought that's what was wrong with me. Well, after I used the bathroom, I thought I would feel better, but I actually felt worse. Like my stomach started hurting extremely badly. So I thought I'd be okay, so I walked back out and I went to go try to finish picking my order where I work in the warehouse. And I started feeling really bad. And I went to the bathroom a few more times and I thought I'd feel better, but I didn't. I just kept feeling worse. So finally I went to my office, in my warehouse where my managers are, and I said, look, I need to sit down. I cannot stand. I feel like I'm gonna pass out. I'm like, yeah, sure. My manager, Brittany, I love her to death. Brittany Young, if you're watching this, I love you to death. She took a chair, put it next to her, and I sat with her for a few minutes. And she's like, are you okay? Do you need to go home? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure I need to go home because I can't stand right now. I'm punched over, I'm holding my stomach. It's horrible. So she paged my husband Isaac because he works there as well. And she told him that he needs to take me home because I'm just in bad shape. So he rushed me home. And as soon as I got home, like 5 minutes later, I just threw up like 5 times, and it was horrible. And I thought I would feel better. I went and laid down for a little bit, and I just felt worse. I started having really bad side pain from like under here to here, like all this right here. My right side was just hurting so bad, and I thought I bruised my ribs or something from throwing up so bad, because sometimes that can happen if you throw up like really intensely, and I thought that's what happened. So the next day my husband went to work and I just stayed here at home, and when I would get out of bed I would get like a sharp pain all on my right side, and it hurts so bad to get up, even to go to the bathroom. When I would get to the bathroom, I would walk there, but then I would sit down and have to just sit there for at least 5 minutes because the pain was just so intense. It was horrible. Thursday, Isaac stayed home and he took me to Wilkie Urgent Care again, the same place I went before for my other problem. And they thought I might have like a kidney infection or urinary tract infection or kidney stone or something in that, but they weren't sure because they don't have the proper, machinery like UT or, any type of hospital does. So they did do a CT scan, but they couldn't really see anything. So they told me that I need to go to the hospital. I was like, oh man, I really don't want to go to the hospital again. Well, I went to Tenova Hospital, and they ran all these tests. They checked my blood and all that. Everything came back fine, but I did have an infection somewhere. They just didn't know where it was. So they gave me another CT scan, and they said that they saw something on my pelvis. So they wanted to do an ultrasound so they can get like a better look. I was like, okay, that's fine. I want to make sure, I want to know what's going on. Excuse me, sorry. So when they did the ultrasound, she did about over 100 photos. She did like a pelvic exam, which is the ultrasound. And she said she couldn't really tell me what she sees because she just can't tell me. It's just part of her job. So I had to wait for the ER doctor to come back and tell me what they saw. He said basically I have fluid in my uterus that is so built up, and I have like blood that's not where it's supposed to be, and my tubes are inflamed and all that, and that's why I had an infection. It was in my female, like my uterus, my fallopian tubes, all that was just, it had fluid all inside of it. It was horrible. So he told me that he was gonna call the local gynecologist that he knows. He has his contact number, so he called him and he told him what was going on, and he wanted me to see him the next day or Monday. And I was like, well, I don't know, because I want to go back to work. Like, I felt fine enough to go to work. And Isaac's like, no. He said, you need to get this checked out. It's your health is more important. I say, you know what? You're right. So I told the ER doctor at Tenova that I already have a gynecologist, and I was gonna see if I could try to get in. And he's like, okay, but I'll take his number too. So all that, the next day, I tried to get a hold of my gynecologist at UT, and they never really answered. So I called the number for the gynecologist that the ER doctor Tenova suggested, and because he said to call him at 8:30. So that's what I did. I called and told the lady that answered, what's going on, and I'm trying to see the doctor, and she goes, she can squeeze me in. So Isaac and I went and saw him that day and told him what was going on, and he did another ultrasound himself because he wanted to see what was going on. And so he gets done with the ultrasound, and first of all, I told him, I said, look, I want to get a hysterectomy because I'm tired of all this. He goes, first we need to do an exam and see from there. And I was like, okay. So after he did his exam, he came out and said, usually I tell women your age, because I am 26, I'm still pretty young, and he said, usually I tell them to back out of having a hysterectomy at your age. He goes, but you need to get this done as soon as possible. He was pretty much saying that the same thing that the ER doctor said, that I have fluid built up, and he's just afraid that it's going to rupture again, like it did the first time, but he's afraid that it's just going to be like 10 times worse than the first time. And so he told me he could see what he could do, and that his nurse would call me in a few days and schedule an appointment for a hysterectomy. And I was like, okay, sounds good. So I had my hysterectomy on February 25th of this year, and it only took about 2 hours, but when I was getting prepped, I had to have 2 IVs, one on each arm, because it was done by robotically, or like laparoscopically. They didn't do the C-section kind. They did like 2 small incisions on my stomach and then 1 in my belly button, because they had to take a scope and go in there and cut me and stuff like that, cut me open. So he comes back in there and he talks to me after the surgery. He is really nice, by the way. Like, before I even had my surgery, he let all my family come back there and talk to him so they could ask him questions and stuff. And my dad had my stepmom Letha on the phone, and then my mom had my Aunt Marla on the phone, so they were able to, you know, like, all hear what he had to say. So that was really nice, because not a lot of doctors do that. Well, anyway, he comes back there, he tells me what was going on. I was a little out of it because of the medication that I was on. And he said that my uterus was the size of a pineapple. I had a huge hole in the back of my uterus, and my cervix was completely dead from the endometriosis, eating it up pretty much. So I had endometriosis like all the way up to close to my heart. It was really bad. I even had it on the back side of me too. And so he said this is the worst case that he's ever seen. And that's what UT said too when I had my surgery almost 2 years ago, UT. And so I also wanted to let you know, when I was getting prepped and going back to the room to get my surgery, I had 2 nurses on each side of me, and I had the anesthesiologist behind me, and then the lights for the operating room were like right there. And it's so crazy seeing that in person. You'd only think that you would, you know, you've seen it on TV, but you'd never think that you would see it in person. So that was kind of cool, but kind of scary at the same time. So they had me scooch over to the operating table, and they were talking to me for a few minutes, and then they put a mask over my face, and then I was out. I don't remember anything after that. All I remember is when Dr. Fields came in there and told me everything about, you know, how bad it was. So basically, that was my story about living with endometriosis. Like, again, I've had so many issues with endometriosis. I had stage 4 of it, and that's the worst case of endometriosis. And a lot of people think that I'm probably crazy because I don't look like I'm sick, you know, but I feel like it should be autoimmune disease, but it's not. Basically, it can go all over your organs. It's like spider web. It just goes wherever it wants to, and it lives off estrogen. So I just want to tell you my story. Also, I wanted to say that they had to take out my cervix, my fallopian tubes, and my uterus because they were in such bad shape. He thought he would have had to take my appendix out, but my appendix was just covered in the endometriosis, so they were able to keep it because they just cleaned it off. And then he also said that my ovaries looked really good, so he just cleaned them up really good and they looked fine, so he was able to keep my ovaries, which is fine by me because I didn't want to go on full-on menopause. I do still have 2 small microscopic spots near my heart, but Dr. Fields said that he's not concerned about those, and he feels that the endometriosis will not grow back, which is really good by me because I don't want it to come back. And so I just want to put my story out there because I feel like a lot of people still don't know what endometriosis is, and that it really put a toll on my life. Like, I was in so much pain from endometriosis. Pretty much what I want to tell you how the pain is it feels like somebody is just like sitting down on your stomach and will not get up for a long period of time. I've had it where I've been in so much pain that I usually hunch over, I can't walk straight, and I can't eat anything because I'm in so much pain. And Tylenol doesn't really do anything. Ibuprofen doesn't really do anything. You just kind of have to let it run its course. And nobody else in my family has it, so I don't know where I got this from because usually it's hereditary. But my mom did have bad periods when she was growing up. She had to have a hysterectomy also because she had fibroids, and she pretty much had like a huge mass on her ovaries, so she had to get that removed. But again, I want to put my story out there, and it's really good to get checked out. If you don't feel comfortable or you feel like you're not getting any answers from a gynecologist, I would definitely suggest finding a new doctor. Dr. Fields is my third gynecologist that I have ever seen, because the one at Fort Sanders, she felt like she didn't know what she was talking about, and she never had me get checked, because I even called her when I was at UT, or after my surgery, and I told her what was going on because they were trying to get me to come in that Friday, and I was like, look, I'm in the hospital, I can't come in. And when I called before that, when I was in pain, she's like, well, her nurse was like, well, we can try to get you in for an ultrasound. And I said, well, I need to get this done as soon as possible. But I ended up being in the hospital, like, I think it was like 2 days later, because I just woke up, and that's when I woke up in pain and got nauseous everywhere. And then my gynecologist at UT, they just kept putting me on all these different medications whenever they should have done an ultrasound, or they should have checked on it more instead of trying to get me on this medication. Because when when I was after my surgery with UT, a gynecologist also called me and had me do an MRI. And when I did the MRI, it still showed that I had the endometriosis all over my organs, or, my uterus, my ovaries and stuff. So I'm like, you know what? Why wouldn't they have removed all of it when they said they did? So I kind of feel like that's a lawsuit. I mean, that's just my opinion, but and then finally I found the Dr. Fields at Tenova, and he's been doing this since the 90s. So he is a really genuine doctor, and I'm gonna stick with him because he seems like he knows what he's talking about. And he went ahead and told me that I needed to get a hysterectomy, when he even told me himself that I should have got this a long time ago. And he even told me, he said, I don't know how you got here, he said, but I'm glad you did. And I said, me too, because you're like the only doctor that I feel like you know what you're talking about, and you know, instead of putting me on all these different medications when I should have had this surgery done a long time ago. So again, I wanted to put my story out there and hope this helps a bunch of women that are struggling with not knowing if they have endometriosis or anything like that. If you want to, you can always join like endometriosis support groups on Facebook. That's what I've done, and it's helped me a lot, because I feel that I know I'm not alone in this, that there's other women that have it out there too. So that really helps. I hope you guys are safe out there, especially with the coronavirus going on right now too. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe and share this story. That would be wonderful. Again, this is your girl, Cali Girl 101, and peace out.